All right, we're live with We Want Winners. The Niners were not winners today, and losers in more ways than one because of an injury that we'll discuss here in a second. Uh, Rod, before this game started, we had we kind of stole one in LA last week, and I think fans would have been very happy with a split, with a Rams Buccaneers split. But when you get the first one, you kind of get greedy. And in Tampa Bay, they kind of lucked out a bit because this game, I think this game was originally scheduled for a 10 a.m. start Pacific, and they moved it. And so it was there for the taking, and it was like, wow, they could actually win this game if things happen a certain way. But did you feel like, to me, this game didn't feel like a giant loss, because I kind of in erasable pencil had this one marked as a loss already. So that was, I'm not too mad that they actually lost the game. Obviously, the Fred Warner injury, which we'll talk about in a second, is the biggest thing of the whole week, of maybe of the season. But where did you have this one pegged? Like, I wouldn't say this was the most disappointing loss in any way.
Yeah, especially after well, I thought coming in it was gonna be a tough go. Um, and then even with, you know, Irving being down and then Godwin going out, and then, it's like I was like you, I kinda had it penciled in as a loss, but then it was like, okay, um they're kinda as injured as we are. Maybe we can
Mhm.
go down there and steal one. And then it was like, once the Warner injury happened, it kind of felt like the air had been let out of the balloon. And then
Yeah.
turned around and Ibuka went out, but still it just wasn't enough to that was just a lot to overcome.
So, yeah, I think we were in the same boat, kind of the way that we looked at this game. And yeah, there were moments where
Excuse me.
if Mac wasn't doing his impression of the Statue of Liberty, that
Oh my goodness.
there may have been an opportunity. This is like, when you watch Mac and you watch that game in St. Louis, dude is tough. Obviously, dude is tough, and even in some throws in this game where he was throwing some lasers down the field, and you're like, wow, it's incredible how he can put balls in very specific places. But then, and you see him get sacked on a very straightforward pass rush in many occasions. Like, he can literally see these things coming right at him, and he does not have the ability to get out of the way or to skate out and give himself a little bit more time. Then you're like, okay, this is why this is another reason why Brock is their number one quarterback. I do feel like if you had a healthy Brock Purdy, you got a really good shot at this one, and you already kind of had a good shot at this one. But hey, I can't really complain about the way Mac has played these last two games. They had a shot today. It was more to me, it was more the fault of both lines of scrimmage for the 49ers than it was really Mac Jones, because he did make some big throws. But we buried the lead, because the real problem for this game and for this season is the loss of Fred Warner. We have been so accustomed to these guys going down that it was all like, when I saw Fred down and he was when they finally got the camera on him, it looked like he was holding his shin. And so I immediately thought, okay, did he break his leg? It was kind of upper shin. So there was a thought as well about, ACL or something. And I was like, gosh, what do you actually root for? What in that moment when we don't know the severity of the injury, what are we hoping for? Because when he grabbed that part of his leg, it's not like you can say, "Oh, maybe it's just a pulled hammy like Kittle," or maybe it's a calf injury. It was a very specific place that it looked to be hurt. And then when you saw the replay, and they shielded the fans really from, I'm sure there were better angles of his foot turning sideways. That was like, I don't know if it was the worst. Maybe it was the worst for him, but that was like on the very like deep end of the drastic injuries that I was hoping it was not. And man, that one just let all the air out of the balloon because I think we thought, at least after the 4-1 start, without Bosa, they're probably not championship bound, but they could make the playoffs with that team. Now without Bosa, without Fred, you kind of wonder what they believe they can be now when you take and this is another exercise I was thinking about is I was like, okay, who's hurt? Purdy, Kittle, Warner, Bosa, Ayuk. I think those are the five most highest paid players on the team. And they're
Mhm.
all out. Two of them are out for the season. Three of them we hope are coming back shortly. Maybe Ayuk a little bit longer, but like how can you win a football game when every player that you decided to pay and even players that you decided not to pay, who Juwan Jennings says he's playing with 5 broken ribs, like these guys are the walking wounded. And at some point, there's going to be a day where you cannot overcome that stuff. And this is why I hope Purdy and Kittle are kind of on their way back next week because there is a little bit more hope when you have your offense on the field the way that it was intended to be on the field. But at some point, like this, there's going to be too much to overcome, not only on the field, but also emotionally inside of that locker room.
Yeah, it's becoming I think we're rapidly getting there to the point where it literally is just too much to overcome. And, we were at a point where just statistically our defensive line is awful. And you kind of could convince yourself and talk yourself into, even if you could just get one guy over there, if you could just give Salah one guy over there, that maybe you could make a difference. But at this point, with Warner is like, he was like a big fatty racer over there in terms of anything that might go wrong, he could fix it and literally fix it in terms of getting guys in position and whatnot. Because there were several times where people were out of position, and it was like, it was noticeable. The analysts mentioned the fact that that's Warner. One of his big jobs is to get everybody where they're supposed to be. And there were several cases where you had blown assignments that probably don't happen if he's there, in addition to all the plays that he just makes. Like, there was one where he just like blew up a running play
It
where
was it was a
he takes
screen pass, I think.
yeah, with screen pass, you're right. Yeah, where he just like carries the guy into and just blows the play up basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, you can't, obviously you can't replace that. And I don't know, some people don't believe in that stuff, but I am one who kind of believes in the emotional toll those losses take. Like, for one, I believe, in addition to just his physical presence, I think Dre going out of that Super Bowl cost us.
Mhm.
In addition to him being a great player, you could just see, Warner's reaction to that play. I mean, to that injury, it just said it all. Now, I'm sure he busted his ass, you know, afterwards, but there was you know, a release. I mean, because that's your guy, and it's just, there's an emotional toll that all these injuries take, I believe. Because, I mean, these are people
Yeah.
too. So it's gonna be interesting, like you say. I don't know, after you have, like, I don't think they're gonna blow it up, but you know. It it becomes interesting. With the season he's having, obviously they're probably not going to do that. But you look at, we're rapidly heading to a place. Christian McCaffrey is on pace for like 1,200 yards receiving, which is crazy for a running back. And so we're gonna be smack that back in the place that we were at the beginning of um last season.
Yeah.
With He's gonna be up for an extension, and Now he's 2 years older. So where are you with that? You could make the case the same thing for Kittle. He signed an extension this year, but basically it was a 1-year extension. So if they chose to, they could revisit that. So again, I don't know that they will um entertain anything that drastic, but you know, these are things that have to be considered um when the balloon is burst like it has been.
Do you think this changes the mentality when it comes into trading for somebody? Because at first you're thinking of bringing in someone to help with the pass rush, but now that might not even be the biggest missing piece here on this defense. Tatum
Yeah,
Bethune, is kind of the guy right now.
yeah.
As we saw today, the pass rush also was not there. Mikael Williams did get his he did get his first sack, which was great.
Mhm.
But they also, maybe the biggest play of the game is Baker. It was like a 3rd and 17 or something, and they have him dead to rights like 2 times, and he still runs for the first down. And that was all defensive linemen not being able to tackle a quarterback. So I do wonder if they change their mind on giving up some future assets to bring in somebody for 1 year, because I think your whole calculus changes with the loss of Fred Warner on what you think that your team can become.
I believe that I've always felt that this team is not good enough to be. We are past. I believe we are past. You know, giving up future assets for this season. I just don't think we're that good, and I think they need every dart throw that they can get for the next 2 or 3 years to just replenish the cupboard because as we have seen, we knew coming into the season that if you were going to try to trick yourself into this team being some sort of contender,
Mhm.
one of the tent poles was that all of those guys that you just mentioned, all of the guys that we paid, they had to be there and play well, and then hopefully we could get some help from some of the rookies, and some of the second year players would continue in an ascending pattern. All of that had to happen for all of that had to happen for us to get to 4-1. Basically, Fred played out of his mind. We got a lot more out of Mac than I'm sure we could have ever imagined. But it just seemed like we were on borrowed time, and I hated to be that guy. But it did not surprise me that as good as well as he had hella throws today. But at some point, you know, McCorkle was going to turn into a pumpkin. Because it's just he is just, in my opinion, and I don't think it's just an opinion. He is a quarterback from a bygone era. If you watch the games all over the weekend, you can't, you know, Joe Flacco aside, you can't find statues in the
Mhm.
pocket. You have to have a certain level of mobility to play this game. There were several plays that, there were at least one touchdown down there on the goal line where it opens up, and Brock could have ran that in, but there was no way in hell Mac was going to be able to do that even healthy. Now,
Yeah.
I give him some grace because he's battling injuries too, and
Yes.
it's like you say, he's a tough guy, but even healthy, he is just not athletic enough to be anybody's. You know, he's a bridge quarterback at best because nobody's going to pay him $181 million to be their starter because you just again for the same reason I was had this argument. There literally have been 7 teams that saw enough in the preseason to call and kick the tires for the Chargers with Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Why? because of the same reason he went third in the draft. He has the skill set that teams are looking for.
Yeah.
That's just not Mac Jones anymore. You or ever. It's just you just can't. You have guys like Jackson Dart have a better chance of getting shots because of the mobility aspect that they bring to the game, that they're willing to um wait on whatever he's going to become as a passer because he can get them out of into good positions, out of bad positions with their mobility. And that's just something that you're never going to get from Mac, no matter how well he's spinning it.
And I do wonder, I have to imagine some of the calculus or some of the decision making for the 49ers for this season was Brock can help us with protection because of his feet.
Right.
And so
Right.
you do have a lesser than offensive line, and we saw that today. Dominic Pooney was a sled in
Wow.
in some of those moments, right? Like he's just getting pushed
Yeah.
right back into the quarterback. Colton McKivitz, I think even Tony Romo singled him out. He's just like, just got
Yeah.
flat out beat on the outside. Like there's nothing else you can
he
say.
said, he said, not great.
Yeah, not great. And this is part of the reason why we never thought that they were going to be a Super Bowl contender is because push comes to shove, the offensive line was not going to be able to hold up. And they have not this year. They have not held up at all. And it's really been big plays and big throws that has kind of kept them in the game on some of these moments. Like I was saying last week, like Connor Colby's head getting pushed all the way back. Like necks are not supposed to work that way. That was just the defensive line dominating the offensive line. And so you look at that Bucs defensive line and you're like, oh, I know it's all about Baker. Everyone wants Baker to be the MVP. Baker was not the most impressive part of that team to me. Baker was fine. He was good. I think
Mm-hmm.
Baker is probably good enough as well. Their defensive line's ability to just move the 49ers backwards whenever they wanted. And then when the Niners were in distress, there was a timely blitz coming that Mac could just not see or feel because he's so worried about the front four getting in. And thus you created this, they have 6 sacks. Like how many, you rarely ever
Yeah.
see a 6-sack game in the NFL these days. And some of it, it's funny because when I'm watching football with Crystal, with my wife, if you watch football enough, you can almost be the color commentator at times because you're seeing things that the announcers are seeing, and you're saying things that the announcers are saying. And there were a couple moments early in the game where I was like, he's holding the ball way too long, and this is going to be a problem, sooner than later. And man, there was just nothing that he could do. I mean, maybe he could. I mean, and he tried, and he gets called for grounding because he tries to get the ball out, and there's no receivers there. So let's transition this conversation to the Bucs' ability on. I thought both lines of scrimmage they kind of dominated. White looked amazing in this game, but it was almost like Emmitt Smith in his prime where he would get the handoff and there would be a good 1.5 or 2 yards before you even saw a red jersey.
Right. So it's like they
And
blocked it. They got 4 yards of carry. It was like they blocked those 4 yards. The offensive line created that space, and then after that, it's whatever you. That's where you judge the back on whatever they are able to get after that. But they were just moving us, and that it's just so demoralizing for us to get done like that. That's how we're
and
supposed. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
there was a stat that they said they have had 3 different right guards this year. So it's not like, they are this built up, offensive line that is the, 1992 Dallas Cowboys revisited. It's a lot of these teams have the same problems as the Niners, right? They just, they don't
Right.
have a ton of depth. But what changes the dynamic for the Bucs to be able to block the Niners and the Niners to not be able to block the Bucs because Christian did not have a good running game again. He did there was just
Not at
no
all.
daylight whatsoever for him.
Yeah, it's really they're not doing him any favors, and the runs that he makes are just the opposite of runs where it's blocked up for him. Their runs that he is basically creating his own space and lanes just by how good he is. The notion that somehow he's lost a step is nonsense. He is playing great.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I don't want to really be so dramatic or so negative because again, this was a game that I kind of sort of expected them to lose. But MD's is in the chat. He and Sheldon and MD's said they need a defense of tackle to help with the loss of Fred. And I saw that was Kawakami's piece as well, which is how do you support Fred in this moment? Well, you just kind of play like hell on defense and just bring out the best of yourself. I don't know if that's possible, but they do have Malik Mustafa was back today. So they do have some people on that defense, but I think it's going to be more along the lines of they kind of sort of need to grow up together live in games because they're so young and they have so many different pieces than in the past. And the reason why you were kind of comfortable with that is because you had Fred. You had Fred leading there, and he was making sure everybody was doing the right thing. And now you don't. And so that falls on Bethune's shoulders. Um, you know, D Winters. There was a couple times where he was in pass protection or he was in pass defense, and it wasn't fantastic as well. You saw the back of his jersey a couple times. So I don't know what it is as far as the defense is concerned. At least from the offensive perspective, we go, okay, we know Brock's coming back, we know Kittle's coming back, Ayuk's coming back, Pretty Ricky hopefully is coming back, and then you move Juwan, or you could just give Juwan a little bit of time to heal, but you move
This is
him.
just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that he's playing with if that's true, that he's
I mean,
playing with 5 broken ribs. That's
I
just
kind of hope he was overstating it because I just feel like that's just terrible to put a man on the field who is in that much pain. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So I hope he was
or
kind of
what he
overstating it.
do to get out there and play whatever shots or whatever he's
My
got. It's
goodness.
just you know the old Ricky Waters for who for what at point. I mean, it's just that is that's going. I mean, I respect it, but it's kind of going above and beyond. I subscribe to a couple of Substacks. One is a both trenches type pod. I mean Substack, and he
Hmm.
talks about um our young guys, Collins and West,
Hmm.
particularly, how and Williams too, how they are not showing up in the box score at all. The
Hmm.
advanced stats on all 3 of them are terrible, like amongst the worst in the league. But if you watch the film, you're seeing some good things from them. Like case in point, the strip sack. I mean, the strip from Alfred Collins last week that they're doing good things, but to your point, with Fred gone, those things need to start translating into statistical improvement. We
Yeah.
can't it can't just be that, oh, look how he split that double team, but if he doesn't make if Williams doesn't make a play afterwards,
Yep.
that really doesn't do us any good at this point anymore. They need to step up. Another Substack that I subscribe to was talking about how D Winters, he was one of the best pass defenders in the league the first 3 weeks, and the injury it has been a precipitous drop for him after the injury. So it could be just simply he's just not healthy, and that's, could be part of the reason why he
Yeah.
hasn't been as effective the past several weeks. But again, I don't know, it's not like we've got to buy anytime soon, so it's like he's just gonna have to suck it up and continue to play injured. um it's it is just, it's really, really frustrating, after this good start. I was starting to try to kind of believe, I've been skeptical all along. I
Yeah.
just didn't think this was a very good football team. I saw the vision that you just put up the tent poles and hope, the combination of Salah and
Yep.
Shanahan, and they bring the rookies along, and everybody continues to get better. And, we look up at week 10 and we're just kind of still hanging around. It I don't know. It's, especially after today, even with all these other guys offensively coming back, with Bosa and Williams, I mean, and Warner not there, it's kind of a tough sell. And, come on now. There's nobody they're gonna, even if they decided they were gonna trade for somebody, there's nobody just gonna replace those two guys. That's
No.
just, replacing Bosa. If you could convince yourself somehow that they could get Trey Hendrickson, or, the usual suspects, the names that are floating around the
Arden
49er.
Key.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too jazzed about that one, but it's just, I just don't. I just think that is throwing good money after bad at this point.
I do want to shout out, we've been, how can you not talk about a lot of the bad things that happened in this game? But Kendrick Bourne is, as Tony Romo said, he's reborn. Had another huge game today. Now, I think he is kind of singled out as not doing the proper thing on the first interception, but ultimately had a fantastic outing. And there's definitely some chemistry there with him and Mac. And
It's
it's almost like
undeniable at this
it,
point.
it's almost like he only really trusts two people to throw the ball to, Mac or CMC. Um, but KB has probably extended his career here, and I think like if you, when Ayuk comes back, when Ricky comes back, they Jordan Watkins hasn't even played yet. He's been inactive every single game. You think about Valdez, Scanling. Um, I think they already let go some of the older receivers in camp in the preseason. I think Bourne is probably sticking around, like he's got to, because he's been able to make some plays. So I'm not sure exactly how they're going to handle that scenario, but Sky Moore catching punts at the 1 yard line and trying to run him out, I don't think that bodes well for his longevity here. But then again, who do they have to return kicks and punts? Maybe you just find somebody who is already on the active roster. But yeah, I think KB probably made it pretty hard for decision making as far as who sticks around when they get a lot of their players back.
Then also, obviously, I'm not by any means saying that he should take any kind of snaps or targets from Kittle, but you got to find snaps for Tonjes at this point. I mean, it's just he has shown himself to be a reliable target as well. So that'll be interesting to see. But I think that becomes pretty easy. That, Farrell has kind of probably lost his snaps in that scenario,
The
and I'm
biggest the
interested to.
biggest free agent contract of the offseason.
Right, but I'm interested to see. I think that there is some game planning that can be done with both Tonjes and Kittle on the field. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
it'll be.
I'm sure Shanahan is thinking about the looks with both of them at the same time, what you could do. Um, I'm envisioning like this is, I'm thinking like Madden football or something, but I'm envisioning, Tonjes running that. little screen that he runs, and then they kind of fake it to him, and then George is just downfield, trucking it. Like I can see stuff that they do with both of those guys. And it probably will help the running game if they do have that 2 tight end set more than with George back. I think that would be kind of interesting to see if that does help Christian.
I just hope that what doesn't happen is we go back to the way it was a couple years ago, where George coming back, he just becomes like a sixth lineman. I just think
Yeah.
we miss something when he is not able to be and I mean he's great at that role. And I'm sure McKivitz doesn't he didn't feel bad about that at all when he's over there on his side. But it's just we lose something of our explosiveness when I know as a defense, it feels like we're kind of as a it feels like we're taking the defense off the hook when we make George a lineman as opposed to a viable target. Um, so yeah,
I
it'll
I mean, I
be it.
think they will use him in spots where, he starts off as a blocker and then he releases. I could see lots of stuff like that because they may just need. I mean, we saw it in the Super Bowl where this dude had to stay in on some
Uh-huh.
stuff because they could not block for
You just couldn't
for Brock.
trust him.
Yeah.
You just
So
couldn't trust. You couldn't trust. You couldn't trust McKivitz.
no, MDs says, do we trust Kyle to make the decisions? We are a pretty pro Kyle podcast. I know there are other conversations about Kyle and whether or not he's good, a clutch coach or whatever. He does have a lot of responsibility with this roster, and I'm sure he's thinking of right now, like, okay, we're gonna get Kittle back, and so how do we plan for that? And do we get Pretty Ricky back, and how do we plan for that? So I do trust Kyle to make those personnel decisions, especially on offense. So much so, I got my Shanahan hat here, my Kyle coach's hat. For whatever reason, every single hat that Kyle has come out with and been on the sidelines, it's so hard to find. I got so lucky finding this one. I jumped on a website and saw it, and then I looked again to get one for my dad. And nope, all sold out. So for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe Kyle's a good model or something.
He's a trendsetter.
He should
Hmm.
ask for some cash for these hats. Yeah. So I mean, I trust, especially when it comes to the offense. I think he's gonna he knows what they're gonna get out of it. But and this kind of goes back to the defense thing. You have guys that they drafted. Nick Martin has not played. He's not been active in a game yet, and it's a healthy scratch. Uh, with Fred out, I don't know who comes in as a depth linebacker, but he has not been active. Jordan James has not been active, supposedly practicing. So there are guys that you kind of wonder about who Jordan Watkins as well, another wide receiver, just has not been active. So it's almost like at this point, can you even trust those guys to come in and play smart? Because now you're playing without Fred and Nick. You're kind of playing behind the 8 ball a little bit. Maybe there's even more urgency, and maybe that is why you would just, you know, you kind of redshirt Watkins, and you're like, nope, we got KB, like he's producing. We trust him. I don't know if we trust him to run the right route every time, but we trust him to make these catches. And so you kind of wonder, this, at least from that perspective, does someone like a Jordan Watkins, does he just get redshirted because they have not put him on the field yet? And it only is going to get crazier with the loss of two just fantastic defensive players. Maybe your two best players on the entire team. So that is to MD's question. That is more what I kind of wonder about, is the personnel decisions as it pertains to the future versus kind of like you kind of have to win now with these veterans. Like Rod called them tent poles. I've called them stars and scrubs. Like they specifically probably believe they have a 2-year window max. And so now do you want to punt window 1 and make it a 1-year window next year? I'm not sure. I'm just glad I don't have to make that decision.
Well, two things. To MD's question, I am firmly, anybody who's listened to this podcast for any amount of time, know I am firmly a Jims and Joes over X's and O's guy. I am one who overall thinks that coaching is kind of overrated. But I can say in that 4-1 start, there are both examples that you can point to where both Kyle and Salah made calls that swung games. And especially in Salah's case, where obviously he had Fred, who is a great eraser, but he made calls both in that Saints game, and then there was one other game specifically that he called a perfect blitz at the perfect time, and we basically that ended the ball game. So while um I have to say that they both have made I've been very impressed with both of their coaching this year, because honestly, even before the all the slew of injuries, I just didn't think that we were as talented as everybody else thought. So I was pleasantly surprised, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because I'm looking at these advanced stats, and outside of Fred and Nick, everybody else is just awful. But somehow, at the end of the game, you know, we've won, and the defense has made significant plays that led to the win. So I have to tip my cap in those cases to the coaching, because it's like, there's no way in hell Sorensen makes that call.
Yeah.
It's so it there is more to it than I like to give credit for with these two guys.
Okay, so I guess we can look forward. The Falcons are next. And the Falcons have there's 2 Monday night games tomorrow. So the Falcons play Buffalo. Good luck to Atlanta, I will say, with that one. And then the Niners get them next week on
Buffalo
Sunday
coming off the
night
loss.
football. Yeah, Buffalo coming off a loss. And then the Niners get them Sunday night. So, what's kind of interesting is the Niners they played Thursday last week, which meant they had an extra couple of days to get healthy. And they did not actually get healthy with those extra couple of days. So you would hope that they can bring some guys back, and Sunday night it's a big game. They are the type of team that kind of gets up for these big games. That is at home. By the way, I was actually surprised how well the Niner fans traveled in Tampa Bay today too, because one
Mhm.
of the ways that you can check is when Juszczyk gets a touch, and you can hear the juice chants. I was like, whoa, in Tampa Bay, although in Tampa Bay, I'm hearing the
Mhm.
juice chants. So shout out to traveling Niner fans who definitely traveled out there. But the Falcons are exactly what you thought the Falcons were. They're a 500 team, around that, depending on the week, better or worse than that. The Niners, if the Niners are a good team, they win this game at home on Sunday night. And if they're closer to an average team, then this thing might be closer to going down to the wire. I think my expectation for these next few games is all based on who they have coming back, because I think now this may be a little bit of kind of reactive, but what I'm going to say, but I kind of think the word is out on what you need to do to to silence the 49ers offense, in a sense, with Mac Jones as the quarterback. And so if you get Brock back, you get Pretty Ricky back, you get George back next week against the Falcons. I hope that we're going to just see a much faster offense out there. And further, if you can open up the passing game just a tiny bit, then I think we see CMC get his freak on a little bit more in the running game, because they're, right now, if you are a defensive coordinator, your mentality is like, okay, we want to stop CMC no matter what, first and foremost. And then you're like, if Mac throws for 350, like that just may be what we have to do. So I think they're comfortable with that. They're comfortable with Mac throwing 45 times. And on the flip side, Shanahan is probably not comfortable with that, but just having to live with it because that is just the reality. And so what I hope is that they're able to get back to what they like to do, which is more of that 50-50 split. And I don't know that they can do that without the personnel coming back. And so I think next week is going to be key as far as guys getting healthy. And who knows, the one that's so hard to understand is Ricky, because these injuries, you see him on the field and you see what he does well and you see what he adds to the offense. And then 1 or 2 times a game, he comes up and it looks like he's in pain. And you're like, I don't know how to think about him as far as longevity is concerned, as far as somebody that you can count on lining up. Not that I want him to be injured in any way, because I do think he's a really, really strong young player. But is he reliable? Like, that's the other thing. So if you can tell me that those guys are back, I think that at least this next week at home against the Falcons, I do think they bounce back in a pretty strong way, at least offensively. And that might be enough to beat the Falcons. But yeah, I don't know that I can make that prediction if it's Mac and no George and no Ricky. So that's going to be key for me to determine whether or not they go Sunday night and win the game.
Well, my concern is it is even more highlighted now with the fact that Warner's not going to be there. Is what are we going to do with Bijan? It's going to
Yeah.
be, because if we saw what Rashad Wright and Tucker were doing, this guy is he's a problem.
Yep.
He is definitely a problem, and I think we need to get this one because these next 2 weeks aren't going to be pretty from a defensive standpoint, because both the Giants and the Texans have been kind of up and down offensively, but their defense, D'Amico's defense is scary. They are really good, and the Giants are really good, and they are both of them are good in places that are our weakness, which obviously up front, their front sevens are both stellar,
Yeah.
and obviously that's our problem. So again, I we got a national spotlight. I hope we can get it together to go ahead and get this win. I'm hopeful that we can do that. I hope that we can do that. I can't say that I'm hopeful, because this is going to be. I think that we're going to be feeling this Fred loss for a minute. It's gonna, we're gonna have to. It's gonna take some regrouping, and you talk about coaching. I think this is where it's gonna show up, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge loss for us. I mean, it's crazy to think that he was playing with, they say he was playing with a fractured ankle last year, and he's only missed up to this point 1 game in his career.
Do you know if
That's
that was the
nuts.
same foot?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking about that right when I saw the ankle. I was like, "Oh gosh, I
Hmm.
wonder if it's the same foot." And just playing on that bad ankle, may have made it a little bit more easier to hurt again. That I don't even
Mm,
want to think about that, because
yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know if I want it to be. If would he want it to be the same foot or the other foot? I don't know what he
Yeah,
would want.
that be right, exactly. For the other one to be bad too now, I don't know. That, like you said, that's crazy.
Yeah. Let's end with this. What do you What do you think about this crazy stat that the 49ers have like the historic record of not having interceptions in the most consecutive games. Is this because because they had Bosa in the first couple of games here, so it's not like they had no pass rush. They are young secondary, but this goes into last year as well. What does it say about their defense that they cannot create turnovers in the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, because I know that there have been a couple that have been dropped, but it's not like it was like some sort of statistical anomaly that it was like we're dropping, the ball is hitting our hands and we've just dropped, this um, out outrageous number of them. It's just like we really haven't it doesn't feel like we've had a lot of opportunities.
Mm-mm.
And that is that's what's the cause for concern is because you can make the case that all turnovers are kind of there's a variance to that. But there's something to be said about not even getting your hands on the ball.
Yeah.
um yeah, that and I'm not sophisticated enough to know where the blame lies, no more than I know that the structure of this defense has always been up front first, and the pressure kind of creates the turnover opportunities. And the drop in pressures since Bosa has been gone has been precipitous.
Yeah. I I think Fred probably is the one who gets the closest to these interceptions. He had one yesterday or last week. He dropped one. It just makes you wonder how much of this is luck versus coverage skill, whatever it is. Like they're just not. I agree with you. I just haven't seen the opportunities there to where we saw very clearly in this game. Both interceptions were, according to Tony Romo, because Tampa Bay disguised their coverage very well.
Hmm.
And the 49ers, like Mac Jones just fell for the banana in the tailpipe like 2 times. And
Hmm.
so, what are the 49ers not doing in those scenarios if this is like this is like what you can do to
Right.
maybe trick the quarterback a little bit. But all right, Sacred Intuition has a new nickname for Jake Brundle, by the way. You'll like this one. Jake Benchel. This is
I mean, I those who are the guys, the statistical analysis guys who's been trying to convince me for the past year and a half that the numbers say Jake Brendel is a good player. I mean, I can't I'm not one who rails and argues against the statistics, but man, I know I watch the games and I watch the all 22, and there's just so many times where he just seems overmatched physically.
Mhm.
um, and for me to just like that's one thing that me and John Chapman agree on is that deliver me from this Jake Brindle is a good player nonsense. It's just not true. I don't care what statistical case you are able to make. Um, I watch the games and he's just not good.
So next weekend, Niners play Sunday night. Are you want to go live after the game Sunday night?
I would love to. I would
Okay.
love to.
So that's the plan. Shout out to the folks hanging out with us. I know we recorded later tonight. That's on me because I've had some weekend Sunday night plans of late, which are ending, by the way, after next week. But shout out to Shelvin, shout out to MDs, Sacred Intuition. Love having y'all in the chat. And this was not meant to be a sort of doomsday kind of podcast, right? But it's just you have to talk about the reality of the situation when you lose probably your 2 best players on your team in Bosa and Warner.
And
How do you replace them?
as Mayoko made the case, Warner, you can make the case that Warner is one of the best players in the league. So it's just it is a blow. And you know, again, kind of do buy the Kool-Aid on or drink the Kool-Aid on some of those cliches. And I think he is the emotional engine of that defense for sure.
Yeah.
So, replacing him isn't just as simple as, the cliche of next man up.
He's Ronnie Lott playing middle linebacker.
Right. Absolutely. And those kind of guys, there is no next man behind them to who's just gonna fill that void. It's just, we have to be realistic about that. I mean, obviously there's gonna be a game next week and somebody's gonna has to go out there and take those snaps. But it's just, it's going to be different. It's going to be different.
All right. That is it from here. We'll be back next week, hopefully, for the fans, for all of us. They can get some pieces back, and this team could look a little bit more, at least offensively, like what we hoped, because that might be the thing, is that the challenge might just be it is time to dominate time of possession and just outscore these other teams. That might be the way that they have to play.
That's just what we're gonna have to do, and then count on Salah to make a call or two here or there to get key stops.
Every time they blitz, it feels like it's a touchdown on the other side.
That's true. That is true. It's just maybe don't blitz up to stout. But let's maybe try to give some of those blitzes to number 6 now that he's back.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We'll be back next week. For Rod, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.